Hello and welcome to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Blair Malloy. Today I'm joined by Greek football expert Stephen Kountourou as we look ahead to Olympiacos versus Rangers this Thursday. Stephen, it's great to have you here on PLZ Soccer. Olympiacos, fourth in the Greek Super League this season. Just how have they started this campaign?
It's been a mixed barrel, to be honest. As you say, we're fourth in the Super League, which is not necessarily acceptable from a lot of Olympiacos fans. You know, the demand is we win the Super League every season, no excuses. That hasn't been the case the last couple of years. But there's been a lot of patience given to the manager, Jose Luis Mendilibar, because we won the UEFA Conference League last year, the first Greek team in a senior men's team, that is, to win a major European honour. And so, despite the kind of mixed start, it's not been one that kind of we're too disappointed about right now, and our league form hasn't necessarily translated to our European form, where we've looked a lot more like the team that we were last season, despite losing a few key members of the squad over the summer.
I think that's something that Rangers fans can definitely relate to. Perhaps a different team domestically, as in Europe. Olympiacos, they've actually had quite a similar European run to Rangers, losing against Lyon, defeating Malmo, and then coming up with an impressive victory of their own against Braga. Does it seem like there is two different Olympiacoses?
It certainly seems that way, and I think Jose Luis Mendilibar came out, in the Greek media after a couple of disappointing results in the league, and he kind of said that teams in Europe afford us more space for us to counterattack, which is where we can kind of play our game. Whereas in the league, the vast majority of teams are putting 10 men behind the ball. There's not as much space for us to counterattack. And so it's just a kind of a tweak that he has to make for our domestic football, where we have to be more of a ball dominant side, where we have to try find those chances in less space with less opportunity to do so compared to Europe. So in terms of Europe, we're actually, for the first time ever, we're less concerned with how we play football, because for years it would be that we dominate Greek football because there wasn't a competition to kind of compete with us. We'd win title after title after title, and in Europe is where we'd fall short and kind of underperform. Whereas now, ironically, for the first time, especially for me supporting Olympiacos and watching them play, it's the opposite problem. There are teams that are way lower quality on paper than anything we've faced in Europe, even this season. But we look so much more convincing against the likes of, like you said, Braga, against Malmo as well, who are both tough opponents. Lyon, okay, we lost, but we had some chances of our own. And so coming against Rangers today, it's going to be a very on Thursday. Sorry, it's going to be a very, very tough opposition, but at the same time, we know how we play in Europe, and I don't think we expect anything different from what we've seen in our first three games.
You spoke about the manager Mendilibar there. There's been quite a lot of made in the Scottish press this week about his comments that Olympiacos have struggled at home. Is that more of a tactical thing, coming up against teams who are sitting in, or is there a pressure element to that as well?
I think it's a combination of the two, that the pressure is insurmountable from Olympiacos supporters to win the Greek Super League title. And that feels like an expectation that is so difficult to be met. We've seen good managers come and go at Olympiacos who are definitely of the level and the quality to manage us. And Mendilibar's no exception. He has his critics, and rightfully so. He's been critical of how he's managed things at times, and how he's maybe at times struggled to fully motivate the players to kind of play for those 90 minutes. But yeah, it's a strange one, because we can see what he's trying to implement. We can see the ideas, and when they are executed, they're great. But it's just, for some reason in the league, we've struggled a bit more. And I think it is more of a psychological thing. Whereas in Europe, we've been able to come and play like we are the Conference League champions coming into the UEFA Europa League. We're not going in with that same pressure.
There's always a lot made when teams from these shores travel to Greece about the perceived hostile atmosphere they'll face. Just talk us through that. What can Rangers expect when they arrive in Athens on Thursday?
Yeah, a very fiery atmosphere. It's going to be a sold-out crowd. I'd be surprised if it isn't. All of our games in Europe, especially lead up to the winning the Conference League, and this season too, domestically and in Europe, games have almost certainly been sold out, even for less important fixtures, I should say, in the league. And so, yeah, Rangers fans can expect a very fiery atmosphere in Karaiskakis, a very loud crowd, not just from the Gate 7 Ultras on one side of the pitch, but from a lot of fans because it's a European night and it's what we live for, to see our team play in European competition every year.
If I were to take a look at the playing squad of Olympiacos, who are the real danger men that Rangers should be looking out for come Thursday night?
Well, immediately I would tell Rangers fans to look at Ayoub El Kaabi, our star striker, top scorer in all UEFA competitions last year. So that is the Champions League, the Europa League, and the Conference League. He was the top scorer scored the hat-trick against Aston Villa, scored 5 goals in 2 games against Aston Villa, scored the winning goal in the final of the Conference League, has had a very, very good start to the season once again. Also, the likes of Gelson Martins on the wing has been very dangerous for us. Our right back / right midfielder, when he's been deployed higher up the field, Rodinei, has been very excellent for us. Santiago Hezze in midfield is a very good holding midfield player who, is just come leaps and bounds since he joined us from the Argentinian league last season. And we've got a lot of young players coming through as well. So, Christos Mouzakidis, who's a 17-year-old midfielder who's, come leaps and bounds from the team, the Olympiacos under-19s team that won the UEFA Youth League last season. So, 2 Olympiacos teams won a European trophy last year. And he's part of kind of that celebration almost of those victories, that he's become a first-team player. So certainly in the attacking and kind of midfield sense, there's danger men. And I guess looking at defence, you've got Baniotis Retsos, who's Greek international, been very, very good for us since he's come back to the club after injury problems in Europe. And goalkeeper Konstantinos Solakis has been one of the star men for us ever since he finally broke into the first team. One of the real talents of the Greek of the Olympiacos academy that has come through in the last few years. So there's talent all around the squad. It's just that, like I said, we lost a few key men over the summer, and so it's kind of, we felt like there's been a little bit of a setback in how we played, but at the same time, there's still a lot of potential in this team, and there's a lot of danger men in there that can cause any team at most levels problems.
We've touched on the positives of Olympiacos. If you were to offer Rangers fans some hope, where can they get at this side? Where are the weaknesses that Rangers will look to try and exploit?
I mean, I would say that if you can just kind of stop Olympiacos creating chances, then that's your way to go. Because it sometimes I feel like the team again, this is more what we've seen domestically rather than in Europe. If Rangers can limit the space that Olympiacos can counter-attack in, then our football can become quite one-dimensional in attack. And there's still that kind of psychological edge where we've got a lot stronger psychologically, but I think our heads will drop if Rangers score early. And we're very capable of coming back, but I think there's certain psychological things that we still need to get over. But again, the thing is, it's hard for me to say genuinely what I think would be the drawbacks, because there's not been that many in Europe. It's more been domestically. So but like I said, limit Olympiacos' space in counter-attacking football, prevent them from kind of getting into the box and quickly as with the wingers we have at our disposal, and that's the way to stop Olympiacos scoring.
From the Greek perspective, what is the perception of Rangers coming into this game? Obviously, in Scotland, Rangers are having a little bit of a tricky spell. They've suffered a couple of high-profile defeats domestically recently. Only this weekend, they did manage to get through to the League Cup final. But what is the perception of Rangers coming into this game?
Well, look, Rangers are still a hugely important game for Olympiacos. Hugely like a big club. People in Greece know the kind of level of Rangers and the trophy haul that Rangers have, and it's still seen as a really, really tough fixture, because at the end of the day, this isn't like some team from the back of nowhere. Rangers are a historical club all over Europe, and they're a club that could very well beat Olympiacos at home if they play their cards right. But I think the mentality for the team coming into this will be they have to win, because winning guarantees them top 24 and a playoff place, whether that be seeded or non-seeded. We'll find out later on, if we can finish high enough. But yeah, Olympiacos will go in wanting to win this game just to make sure they secure the playoff places for next year.
And just briefly, for any fans that are making the trip over, do you have any travel tips for the city so that fans can really make the most of their experience over there?
I mean, look, but Piraeus is the port in Athens, so it's quite easy to get from Piraeus to other parts of the capital. There's loads of great tourist destinations. Obviously, there's the Acropolis Museum. There's loads of great bars. There's loads of bars kind of in the Piraeus area as well. If you don't manage to get tickets to watch Olympiacos versus Rangers in the stadium, there's loads of fan kind of bars and like loads of people be watching the game in the Piraeus area. So I would urge anyone who doesn't actually manage to get a ticket to this game to go, because I doubt that they'll encounter a really hostile atmosphere outside of the stadium. People aren't going to begrudge them for being the opposition fans. There's been a lot of positive stories of people going to Greece to watch games that they haven't been able to go to the stadium to, and the locals have interacted with them in a good way. So that's not something that necessarily gets brought up. You hear the opposite, unfortunately. That's what really makes the news. But yeah, I think there's loads of great things you can do in Athens, but Piraeus specifically as well, in kind of the general vicinity of the stadium.
And Stephen, just finally, if I could push you for a score prediction for Thursday night.
Well, I have to back my team, obviously. So I will say that Rangers will score, but it will ultimately be a 2-1 win to Olympiacos, and we will secure top 24 in the UEFA Europa League playoffs.
Brilliant, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us here on PLZ Soccer.
Thank you very much for having me.